call the meeting to order for the legislative session 2017-10 for the Wicomico County Council for May 2nd, 2017. Those that would like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do.
Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda, entertain a motion to approve the legislative minutes from April 18th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the open work session minutes from April 18th, 2017 in reference to a request from the town of Willards.
So moved.
Second. Any corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion from council to adjourn from the legislative session so that we can enter into the Urban Services Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. We're now operating as the Urban Services Commission for May 2nd, 2017. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from April 18th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to adjourn from the Urban Services Commission so that we can enter to reconvene as the Wicomico County Council in legislative session.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're now adjourned as the Urban Services Commission reconvene in the Wicomico County legislative session. Good afternoon. Good evening, Mrs. Hurley.
good evening, Council President, County Council members, ladies and gentlemen. The first item on the agenda this evening is to receive an update on the 2017 session of the Maryland General Assembly, and we have members of the Wicomico County delegation here.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. If those members of the delegation would come forward, please, we'd appreciate it. Thank you all for being here tonight. Senator?
Yeah, absolutely.
You are certainly part of the delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Right on.
I know that we do have a consensus for from everyone to appear. The only member who I know has had to decline for personal reasons is Johnny Mouts, and he requested to meet at some other point in time with the council. So that being said, if you could please make sure you're using the mics when you talk so that it goes over, so that PAC 14 can hear it. It does get recorded. First thing I would suggest would be going from left to right, if you would do us a favor and introduce yourself for the public. Thank you. From my left, yeah.
I was double checking you, President Cannon. Good evening. I'm Delegate Sharice Sample Hughes, representing District 37A, and certainly a good feeling to be home tonight, if you will, on the opposite side of the table. But thank you for the opportunity to be here to give you an update on our progress and things that occurred during the legislative session. Certainly it felt once again a session that required roller skates because it was certainly a very busy season. And I would love to give you an update. Did you want us to give updates and then go across?
I think we'll do all the introductions, and then,
Okay,
however
absolutely.
anybody would like to approach the discussions. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everybody, how y'all doing?
Well,
Good.
thank you.
Yeah, you know. My name's Carl Anderson Jr., and I'm blessed to be here tonight as a member of the Wicomico delegation. And I think we had a very good session, and it's just another year of us coming together and gelling that much better, working for Wicomico County.
Thank you, Delegate Anderson. Senator Mathias, good to see you here.
Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of the County Council, citizens. Thank you for being here tonight. I know you come here to bring your concerns. As you all know, I represent District 38, and the eastern half of Wicomico County. All of us, I look at each and every one of you, have had the pleasure of working together effectively. Not only this session, but other sessions. You felt the need that you wanted to change how your school board representation was picked, and we were able to do that. We did it by working together, by causing public hearings and finding consensus, and it works. We have some good things here that we're talking about, what represents the fact how well we all work together and how effective we are. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Council President Cannon, Wicomico County Council, pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Delegate Chris Adams. I live in Hebron, covering District 37B, which covers Talbot, Dorchester, Caroline, Wicomico. It is a true pleasure to be here and home with you here. I serve on Economic Matters Committee. I'm a private businessman here in Salisbury. I found this to be a very effective session. It's 3 years out of a 4-year term, and very interesting goings-on. Look forward to spending a few moments as we communicate back and forth our issues and agenda.
Great. Thank you, Delegate Adams. Delegate Mary Beth Carosa, how are you tonight? Good to see you.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, members. Thank you for this invitation. I didn't know if this was the opportunity where you were given little recaps or just introductions at this point.
Well, you're the last to do the introduction. You can be the first to do a recap if you like.
No, I'll certainly defer to our chairman of the Wicomico County delegation,
There you go.
Delegate
There you
Anderton,
go.
but Delegate Mary Beth Carosa, District 38C, which includes the northern part of Worcester County and the eastern part of Wicomico County, and I serve on the House Appropriations Committee, on the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee. I'm also a member of the Veterans Caucus and the Women's Caucus. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Where would you like to start? I mean, an overview, I guess, maybe would be helpful as far as what you think was the most beneficial part of this last session, especially how you see it impacting Wicomico County. Delegate Anderson, if you'd like.
Well, I guess, we could start with items in the budget, but I think we'll start with a bill that we opposed that wasn't successful, and that was the repealing, I guess, or overriding the governor's regulatory repeal of the BAT systems, the best available technology, allowing standard systems to be installed once again outside of the critical areas. And so that bill was not successful. And ironically enough, I worked with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to stop it. They probably won't want to hear that. So that bill will more than likely be back next year. There'll be a summer study done on that. And I'm somewhat confident that I'll be a part of that summer study. So we get another year reprieve, to be able to take advantage of the governor's regulatory measure here on the Lower Shore, especially in Wicomico County. A bill that we had we had submitted on behalf of you was the Sunday hunting bill. And we got the bill out of the House. We're going to work again on it next year so we can get it through both houses. It was a little bit of fun on signing die between Senator Mathias and I on the phone, trying to figure out how to get it corrected in the Senate. And it was interesting. Both of us had two phones going across the hall from each other, talking with somebody in the committee, talking with him. He's talking with me, somebody in the committee, and we realized that we were up against the clock. And so, at the request of the council president and members of the council we were able to reach out to, we didn't accept the amendments that would have taken away the full Sunday we already have and replaced it with 3 hours for each Sunday during the hunting season. So we'll try that again next year, and I'm pretty confident we'll be successful with that. Items in the budget, again, real quick. There was $29 million for the Lower Shore school construction. Delegate Sample Hughes was really lobbying very hard for West Salisbury, and she was successful. Same thing with Parkside and Wye Middle, and some improvements up at Delmar Elementary, and the Arthur Purdue Stadium. That's going to be a fun story when we write that book in the end. And it was another thing of last-minute magic between the Speaker of the House and Senator Mathias working over in the Senate as well to secure that funding. And as we see that project continue to transform and really set itself up to be a true dynamic entertainment full-service gem for the Lower Shore that we're lucky to have in our backyard. So I'll turn it over at this point, to my colleagues. They have things I'm sure they'd love to discuss with you.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Anderson. Senator Mathias?
Would you like me to go next?
Sir.
Sure. Well, I see the auditor over here. You want to talk money first?
He watches you very closely.
I know, and hopefully for the good when you get done, when the day is done. And I see we're joined by my colleague, Senator Addie Eckert. Would you like for her to do her thing first?
Sure, Senator Eckert, why don't you introduce yourself so everybody knows, for the public's purpose, if you don't mind?
Senator Addie Eckert from Cambridge, serving District 37, all of Talbot, Dorchester, a third of Caroline, and half of Wicomico.
Pleasure to have you tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Mathias?
And certainly, Senator Eckert works very hard. Her committee of jurisdiction is budget and tax, and mine Senate Finance, and we won't get into that. But one thing I want to talk about was House Bill 1109, which relieves you of the obligation. You know, we went through a tough economic time, and the state took a position where the county would have to make contribution for the pension system, for teachers' pension system.
Correct.
And House Bill 1109 relieves you of that obligation. And Wicomico County, that's about $319,000, Mr. Auditor. So,
Yes.
you know, when you're sitting down and doing your budget, I think that really
It's a
helps.
big number.
It is a big number.
It is.
And it's important as we move forward and our economy starts to level out, that you can see that there is consideration towards that relieving of that responsibility. So I'm particularly proud of that. I don't know if Dave Ryan's here or not, but, you know, there was a bill, and I know it may not sound wholly germane at the moment, but it was a motorcycle sales bill. And, you know, Ocean City has that, although we're in Wicomico County, have Bike Week, which is important to all of us here. And all of a sudden, there was a nuance in the bill, and I'll get back home here in a moment. There's a nuance in the bill that prohibited the final portion of a sale of a motor vehicle at a car show or a motorcycle show. And that was kind of detrimental. And what really became detrimental was to the Rommel Harley-Davidson, which I think is scheduled to join you here in Wicomico County.
Right.
So, you know, when you talk about economic incentives and making sure that we're all working for business, that was a bill that came forward. We were able to work on it, passed out of the House. There was no cross-file in the Senate. As soon as Dave reached out to me, you know, I went and got right involved with it, and we were able to make certain that that bill passed. It's an important piece of legislation. You know, my mom always told me, Jimmy, take care of what you got first before you worry about other things. And, you know, part of what we have here that's critically important is our poultry industry. We were there were some issues that would have been adverse, and we were able to turn those back. And but also there's things that were good, and that was the live whole wheat bill that puts us in equity with our neighboring states, where you can haul more live whole poultry to processing plant, which would allow less trips, less emissions, and certainly allow these trucks to cross back and forth between the state lines to be able to do so equally. That was a bill that we put in last year, and we weren't able to kind of get the nuances of that worked out, but we did this year, and I'm happy to report, you know, that the growers and the integrators and everybody that represents such a critically important industry here, both for our poultry industry, our grain growers, and the like. So, you know, we're looking forward to new business, new investment, as well as protecting what we have. I know I heard my colleague talk about, you know, he could talk about the budget, but you know, I think personally, Wicomico County had another very good year. I mean, I had a very good year, but, you know, we can talk about some of the things you already heard. You know, that's going to be an interesting trail when you talk about the Purdue Stadium. In, out, in, out. Well, guess what? It's in.
Good.
And there's a lot of hands. Let's be honest. Every one of my colleagues here, fingerprints are on doing this, but there's a lot of hands that are grabbing for a finite amount of money.
Right.
And when you're able to get those monies, like $1 million for Salisbury, you know, that's important. And when the governor and the comptroller come down here, as you well know, during session, and they talk about the importance of our community, that's important. And that really underlines those kind of things. I put in a bill, the Lower Shore Clinic, it was a bond bill, a day program for seniors with disabilities. You know, there are folks in our community that need that extra effort, and we're there. And again, there's a limited amount of money. Those localized bond bill monies were not in the budget when the governor put it in. We had to fight hard to get the money. We got the money, and we bring some of those money home. Let's talk about a moment. I want to applaud all of your leadership. I see John down here, each and every one of you. Warwick Community College,
Right.
and the county executive here. You guys stepped up. for that last piece of funding to make colleges, community colleges more affordable. I mean, that's where folks go, where they need to be, they want to continue their education, they want to pursue a vocation and the like, and it's important. You made it more affordable. We made it more affordable this year with small colleges here, where we were able to bring parity back to these 7 small community colleges throughout Maryland. What's that mean? For Warwick, Mr. Auditor, that means an additional $400,000. So if you're adding them up, $1 million here, 300, 400 there, 400 there. I'd like to say, and I could go on more and more, that we had a real good session. There was a lot of other stuff that I can say to you, but in a grand scheme, this heroin opioid addiction.
Right.
I rode up with the fire chief and I asked about calls for service. It plagues every community. It plagues every community. You know it. And we have to deem it as a critical priority, as the governor did, a state of emergency. He appointed one of our very own, Clay Stamp, to head that up, appropriated $50 million over 5 years. We came in with the HOPE Act that requires a hotline, additional beds, and a number of other things to address the issue. We're going to get to the bottom of that. We got a great team towards doing that, and I did not see the sheriff here. I think I may have seen someone from the sheriff's office, but we increased the penalties for fentanyl. It's a very, very lethal drug. Right. So, we go from protecting our own with our industry to protecting our own with public safety to growing our own to our education. You will hear from my colleagues, and I'll stand down at this point, about the record amounts of funding for education, pre-K through 12, different food programs we've done to make food more affordable for our children, to make sure that when they come, they're ready to learn. And there's some other things, but I'll refrain at this point. But I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Eckert, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and I've prepared a document for you. I don't know if you had already received it.
We did receive it, yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
So you already have the items in the budget, and I appreciate the opportunity, as all my colleagues do, to serve in Annapolis, particularly on the Budget and Tax Committee. So this year, we passed a $43.5 billion budget, and for the 3rd year in a row, there'll be no new taxes, as you well know, and the governor continues to work on keeping Maryland open for business, creating jobs, making sure we have adequate education, and then dealing with a number of the crises that you have previously heard about. The governor also made a historic investment into K through 12 public education, $19 billion since taking office, and increased public education this year by $6.4 billion. Also working on the legislation to preserve the P-TECH schools, to double and secure funding for that initiation, for the BOOST project, and $20 million, as you heard, to tackle the heroin and opiate crisis. And that's going to be critically important to us, as you know, here on the Eastern Shore, and there are already elements of that being put in place as we speak. An additional $1 billion went in the budget to preserve our most precious asset, the Chesapeake Bay. And of course, the budget continues to meet spending affordability's goal of reducing our structural deficit. There were $17.2 billion in general funds, $9 billion in special funds, 12.9 federal, and of course 4.4 billion. And then I have exactly what you all received here in Wicomico. So their total direct aid this year was a 3.8 increase, 3.0 increase in total state aid. And then with your education total, it's a 3.5 increase. Your transportation revenues that came in, 10.8 increase, and then through the capital budget projects, many of which you've heard, that was a matter of 16 billion came back, and that includes all your schools, your library renovation, ramps, Lower Shore Clinic, your aging school program. So I think as well, our counties on the shore did extremely well this year, and you have seen the governor be very active. I was concerned this year for infrastructure, so worked with my colleagues in a number of ways, with Delegate Sheree Sample Hughes to continue to be able to provide preceptor tax credits for our nurse practitioners and our docs to make sure we have an adequate supply of health personnel. Worked across the aisle on a housing package that you might find interesting as you learn more about it, and we hope to get more information out about that, include land bank, possibility for a land bank authority, for expedited foreclosure, and then a task force that'll look at tax sales, which will include wastewater and water. So there's more on that. They were really important because when you're talking about blighted communities and improving our opportunities for housing and renovating our downtown areas, will be a critical package moving forward.
Does that last one, though, does that also keep someone from, I mean, it keeps property from going to tax sale if they owe money on water and sewer?
It's a task force that's going to study the tax sale process, but that is a question that is being addressed through that process, yes.
Right, and we understand, too, that people who are having problems making their payments, et cetera, it can be a difficult situation.
Correct.
But in the same line, I think there has to be some sense of responsibility
Right.
to come forward and
Yeah,
and pay those
what we
bills.
did, there was a bill that would have put a moratorium on the whole water tax issue, if you will, so that people, there are companies that buy up, when people don't pay their water bills,
Right.
then companies come in and help out, and then they're exploiting those folks. So we did not pass that bill as it was moving through, but we did say we would take a look at it through the tax sale study.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And we also worked with Delegate Outs on the Connect Rural Maryland. We have spottiness with regard to lack of maintenance with our landlines, our broadband, our connectivity, so that's been a big piece of it. Infrastructure is critically important, as you know, moving forward, because we all want to make sure that we have the elements in place to grow our communities. And then jobs and manufacturing bills, a number of tax credits that came through our committee that you will find in that packet of information.
Great, all right, thank you very much, Senator. Delegate Adams?
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
It's still light out, it's hard to grasp evening, you know?
Time flies when you're having fun. Great to be here with my colleagues tonight. Have enjoyed my 3 years working in the legislature, working along with Senator Eckhart, who's been something of a mentor to me. It's been very interesting as a private businessman with no political experience, showing up in Annapolis and trying to find my way where I can be relevant and help advocate for our citizens, but also the business community. I serve on economic matters, so I'm going to bring up a couple, 3 bills, try to be concise for the time
Sure.
constraints. But the top bill for us in economic matters this year was HB 1, or the Healthy Working Families Act. And I'll just speak briefly to this because I think this will affect possibly almost all the businesses that work here in Wicomico County who employ over 15 people. It basically imposes a state mandate, something of a union-style mandate, where employers are going to be required to offer sick leave to their workers in an incremental fashion. As they work a number of hours, they will accrue sick pay that they can take when they like. The problems that I have with the bill is that it seems to be coming at a wrong time. We've seen this bill for each of the 3 years that I've been in office, and prior to running for office, I advocated along with the National Federation of Independent Business to oppose this legislation. This was the year that it went through. I would caution your business community that it gives the commissioner tremendous power to come into your business and perform an audit. If you've never been audited by the Department of Labor, I will tell you that it's a very intensive and difficult process to go through. I'll also share with you the term rebuttable presumption. So if you're in the business community, basically what that means in government is that you're guilty until you can prove yourself innocent. So add that along with a commissioner with a lot of power, and I share with you that this is a very serious piece of legislation. The conversation is still open at the moment because the governor still has the opportunity to either veto this bill or allow it to go into law. I would suspect that should he veto it, that this bill will be overridden, his veto will be overridden next year. So just ask the business community to be very aware of what's going on with that bill. I think it's the wrong time for this kind of mandate or legislation coming forward. In our committee, we also heard HB 1350. And so I would think in Wicomico County, we're seeing the same sort of things I'm seeing in Dorchester and Talbot County when it comes to these industrial solar projects. The state of Maryland has imposed the renewable portfolio standard, and this year we saw the governor's veto overridden again, which increases that standard to a significant level. And what we're finding is that the low-hanging fruit, or the easiest ways for the state to achieve these energy standards, is through solar. And on the Eastern Shore, where the land is flat, we have clear land. Developers of these type of projects are going after farmland and taking farmland offline and putting these projects on. The county council will benefit from this piece of legislation that actually passed. A Carroll County delegate named April Rose put the bill in, where they were very concerned about the Public Service Commission making decisions without getting proper input from their county council. And so the bill basically lays out that there's a comprehensive plan, and that the comprehensive plan that, say, for example, Wicomico County has, that the Public Service Commission should go through a very rigorous process, including local communication on this, their thoughts, before we start seeing these large projects. In some cases, these projects can be 500 acres or more. And so I'm worried that these projects are coming fast and furious, and that they're going to move faster than planning and zoning tends to come through. So the legislature has given the counties, including yours, an important tool. So do research HB 1350, where this gives you some leverage in your communication with the Public Service Commission. Senator Eckhart, as I spoke earlier, and I worked together on one of my most interesting and enjoyable pieces of legislation we passed. I got a call from the town of Preston last fall, and they had a real concern with a consent order that the Maryland Department of Environment had laid on them to improve their lagoon system to the best available technology, or the ENR system. The problem with the town of Preston, as you'll find with many of our small municipalities, is that their citizens can ill afford these very significant costs to do these major upgrades to wastewater treatment. Yet, we as a state should try to leverage dollars to improve the systems when we can. In the case of Preston, this was going to be about a $500,000 cost that they would have had to pass to their citizens. So Senator Eckhart and I appealed to the legislature along with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and we actually got legislation passed this year that allows us to reach into the $70 million in the Bay Restoration Fund and use that money as opposed to citizens' dollars to make these increases happen without there being an economic impact to the citizens in Preston. Now, in my district, there are a number of communities that will benefit. I will share with you in Wicomico that the towns of Willards, Sharptown, Pittsville, and Hebron are in line over the next number of years to go through these upgrades. I would encourage you to reach out to these municipalities and let them know that HB 384, which relates to Bay Restoration Fund eligible cost expansion, passed, and that this can be a significant way to perform these upgrades. This doesn't look backwards, it only looks forward. Senator Eckhart worked on some of the challenges we had getting this bill through, but found that to be a very valuable piece of legislation that we moved forward. Beyond that, I would say to you that I came before your county council, and I'll make this my last point so you can move along
Sure.
here. But we came before you with the Department of Housing and Community Development to try to resolve the sprinkler system issue, and we did bring a regulation, a piece of departmental regulation that helped you bring dollars to new home construction, real dollars, $5,000 or more, to help leverage the cost constraints for someone trying to build a new home. The problem with the piece of regulation that we brought down that you were able to take advantage of is that it had to be used in priority funding areas. The governor's office put a bill in, HB 107, that did not pass this year. We were very hopeful that it would pass, but the goal of that legislation was to expand the use of those dollars through DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, outside of priority funding area. I look forward to working with the administration next year to see where we fell short on that issue and try to get it so new home construction can expand and frankly get started in Wicomico County. I think we have some real
need it.
headwinds, Council President, in that regard. So let's hope that that bill comes through next year and we can get it for the county.
Yeah, I thought we had that one easily.
Yes, well, we came up and
Yeah.
gave testimony. The Secretary Holt testified on the bill. We hear 2,800 bills in the legislature, plus or minus, and not every great idea passes. Certainly a lot of bad ideas do pass.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate.
Sure.
Delegate Sample Hughes.
Good evening
Good evening.
again. Certainly wanting to recognize the fact that every time I get the chance to go home at night, I have the opportunity to ride right directly in front of West Salisbury Elementary. And just to let you know, if you haven't seen, there's been tremendous progress there. And to see that each and every day is certainly inspiring. So to that end, I just want to at least make you aware that in the budget, there is $5 million for that particular project. So we can continue to move forward, and I do, again, thank you for your support for that project. It's certainly been a long time coming. Just to highlight, I do serve on the Health and Government Operations Committee in the House, and we had a tremendous amount of health-related bills on this year. Pleased to say this year that a particular bill that Senator Mathias and I worked closely on, or hand-in-hand on, was one with regards to breast cancer, wanting to reduce the rates in our state, which is extremely high, by requiring health insurance companies to make sure that there aren't any discrepancies in funding for the mammography as people go in to get 3D mammography. So they weren't differentiating between 2D versus 3D. And so at this juncture, that is a state mandate, and it's a good mandate. Now, oftentimes people say they don't like mandates, but if you understand the grave importance of trying to get that detection early on, it's going to save lives. And so we're very pleased to see that legislation move forward in the state of Maryland. Just on this last weekend, I was in Boston at a health conference, and they talked about our state having a lot of health mandates. But we were collectively, as the legislators that were there, as a nation, we're just saying that, that is one area that we all need to see some movement in, and they are wanting to do the same. Just to give you a couple of more highlights with regards to our health-related issues, we looked heavily at certainly the need to reduce the prescription prices. And so we passed House Bill 631 that allows the Attorney General the ability to address the price gouging. And many persons try to go about their daily lives and try to get generic drugs and just kind of maintain. They often are found with the fact of having to pay high prescription prices. And so now in the state of Maryland, we have that ability to allow the Attorney General to get in the process very early on, and Medicaid having to give them a report to say these prices are going up. And so to that, I think it's extremely important so our citizens can be a little bit more safeguarded, if you will, for their prescriptions and the things that they are in need of. Also, in our committee, we did look at the fact that the heroin opioid crisis is certainly at the helm for the entire state of Maryland, but we also looked at the provider rates. Oftentimes we talked about we need to make sure that people are in place to provide and be able to receive the services, but if you don't have the persons in place to provide that service, then that's a detriment as well. So we were able to increase the budget about 3.5% for provider rates and making sure they're getting their financial resources to be able to serve the citizens in our state of Maryland. One other thing I'd like to highlight was that there was also a bill passed that is going to require our school systems to create a policy to make sure that they have the medicine on hand to revert if there is an overdose. Oftentimes, unfortunately, drugs are everywhere, and young people, unfortunately, may participate in that, but it's going to now require our school system to also adopt and create a policy. One last piece on the school system I just want to highlight, and I thought it was pretty unique, but this is a bill that was actually passed, which is House Bill 669, that now requires the Board of Education to provide an anonymous two-way electronic tip program. our children too often are bullied in the school system, and, everybody has a cell phone. And so this is an opportunity for the student and/or the adult to be able to anonymously send the message to the system to get that information to say, this is what's going on, but they won't have to feel pressured or bullied, if you will, to give the information to an adult directly. They'll be able to do it anonymously. And so I think that may help curb some of our issues. Wicomico County and Dorchester County are the highest counties in the state of Maryland that have incurred bullying, and that has it's arranged that the Maryland State Department of Education has that information. But I was really surprised to learn that our county and Dorchester were the very high ones at the very top. Lastly, just wanted to recognize that the state of Maryland, we passed House Joint Resolution 10 that really addressed the Chesapeake Bay programming and running to show forth that we are concerned about the financial impact that it could have in our areas, in our estuaries, as it relates to some things or cuts that may be coming down from the federal government. And I'm really concerned about that because our municipalities benefit from the funding with regards to the wastewater treatment plants and all of that funding that comes along with that. So collectively, the General Assembly was on one accord with that particular piece of legislation. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the sprinkler conversation. I know Delegate Adams brought it up. He did put in a bill with the department, and in my opinion, try to circumvent the process. But we were wanting to move forward with both pieces of legislation, and unfortunately, neither legislation passed. But Senator Mathias was able to get a hearing on the fire sprinkler bill, and one of the concerns with that particular piece of legislation was the fact that the governor will be required to put in the money to ensure that this program will move forward. So it wasn't of the interest of the Senate to move that forward, but I certainly believe personally that it's necessary to continue to work together to make sure that bill is a better bill for the citizens of the state of Maryland. And to that end, I'll close, but I do have intercession letters for each one of you, and I can get those to Laura so we can pass those out and you'll have additional information.
Thank you, Delegate Sample Hughes.
Sure.
Delegate Carrozza, good evening.
Good evening.
Glad
Thank
to
you,
have you
Mr.
here.
President, council members. First of all, I think this is a terrific idea. Thank you for having us. And I also want to thank all the interested people that came out to the meeting. That's great for us to be here tonight. You've heard about a lot of the successes, and we really did have a productive session for Wicomico County. I just want to, what I'll try to do is touch on some other highlights since the budget was covered. I want to start though by saying there was the urgency with the session and the intensity of it started far earlier than usual this third session. And a lot of that was because there were members that were reacting to what was going on at the federal level. And I give Governor Hogan credit because he really kept his eye on the ball on our state priorities. He introduced a state budget that, kept us on the path of fiscal responsibility. You heard about the highlights as far as the record funding in education. You heard about the highlights for Wicomico County. I did want to touch on, there was one piece I didn't hear, that there was some tax relief. A version of Governor Hogan's Hometown Heroes passed, and this would allow the first $15,000 of retirement income for first responders and emergency personnel to be exempt from state tax. So
Which bill is that?
that was the Hometown Heroes. I'd have to look up the number, but
We have a lot of first responders in the room.
right. So wanted to make sure that was included, and that was a version of Governor Hogan's proposal. I want to, give credit to Delegate Anderton as the chair of our Wicomico County delegation on really day in and day out ensuring that Purdue Stadium funding was a priority, and he was in front of the governor, in front of Chairman McIntosh, working with the delegation members. So really that was a team effort, but Delegate Anderton really made it top priority day in and day out, and it paid off. I want to follow up. Again, thank you for Senator Mathias mentioned your work and support for Warwick Community College, but fill you in a little bit about a little drama we had with that bill. There was a bill introduced early in the session by Senator Justin Reedy and Delegate Susan Krebs from Carroll County and their bill, working with Dr. Hoy, who is very active in the Community College Association, that was designed to fix an inequity in the funding for the 7 small community colleges across the state of Maryland. This bill probably came to life and died, I mean, numerous times. At the very end, after the budget was actually resolved, there was still an opening to try to actually put the funding on, to put the funding on the same level. And what we were up against, to be honest with you, is the Western Maryland schools. This is going back to Speaker Cass Taylor actually gave them the advantage on that, and this is what we were up against. At the very end, I worked with Chairman McIntosh, and I said, listen, I'm looking at this bill, and we still don't have it right. The funding levels aren't right. I said, I am going to propose an amendment that will bring all the funding up to the Western Maryland school level, so then no one loses on it, so we wouldn't have the pushback from the Western Maryland schools. And I said, furthermore, when you compare the community college funding to what the University of Maryland school system receives across the board, we certainly can bring up our community college funding to this level. So I wanted to report to you my amendment, which was accepted, fixed the inequity, and beginning in fiscal year 19, each of the small community college will receive $851,300. So just wanted to fill you in on that. A couple other, wanted to also thank you and the council members who were involved in any feedback on the roadkill repeal bill, because we were successful. That was Governor Hogan's top legislative priority. We were successful, and that's important, particularly, and you've heard me bring this to your attention before, 60-foot road improvements and other priorities here. That repeal bill allows us to keep those priorities moving forward. I wanted to mention, because it has a Wicomico County focus, one public safety bill that I was involved with, I sponsored, and you all remember that Rob Schulteis was killed by a driver under the influence of a CDS. Well, what we found out when they went through that case is that there's an equity in the law that had that driver been under the influence of alcohol, the penalty would have been 5 years, but because it was a CDS, it was only 3 years, which really doesn't make any sense because CDS are illegal and alcohol is legal. When that inequity was brought to our attention, we introduced legislation that would bring that penalty up to the same level as alcohol. We were successful in passing that, and I was really, it was very humbling to see the widow come up with the children and the family when Governor Hogan signed that bill. And maybe it brought some healing and some fairness to what happened. It was mentioned earlier in the presentation by Senator Mathias, the heroin opioid crisis. I want to point out that Director Shipley, I know right here in Wicomico County, just had a meeting to take advantage of the fact that Governor Hogan has declared this crisis an emergency declaration. And what that means, it does bring more resources and more authorities that I believe we're now seeing the locals take advantage of. And I would encourage all of the council members to be involved in that effort. Governor Hogan has made it a top priority from the beginning, $50 million over the next 5 years. He had 2 legislative initiatives that were included in final legislation. One that would, if you are found guilty of cutting heroin with fentanyl, you would be 10 years imprisonment, because we now know the crisis has changed and the fentanyl first-time use can kill you. And also one of Governor Hogan's legislative initiatives to require that doctors, when they prescribe the lowest dosage possible for pain, so we can start to get a handle on both the strength and the quantity of the opioids being prescribed. You know, why is that needed? Because in 2016, 7.3 million CDS, there were prescriptions, and that's more than Maryland's population. So hopefully the combination of the emergency declaration that allows the state and the locals to work together, the supplemental funding, the legislative initiatives, we can start really attacking this on all fronts. I want to close by talking a little bit about the partnerships that I believe that we have between Governor Hogan and the county and the municipalities and the businesses. I've been encouraged to see one bill that we did not talk about yet, and I know my colleague in the House Economic Matters, Delegate Adams, the More Jobs for Marylanders, that did pass. That was one of Governor Hogan's initiatives. And Delegate Adams mentioned the paid sick leave bill, and the reason why it's so important that we bring that to your attention, that we have to continue to work this issue no matter what happens, whether, I talked to 2 businesses today that are encouraging Governor Hogan to veto that bill because of the impact. One of those is Foot Management in Pittsville. They actually closed down one of their businesses, Foot Fit. They had 2 businesses there, and they closed down one of the businesses and attributed part of that to the paid sick leave bill. So that's something that our strategy has to continue on this, and we want to work with the council on that. And finally, end on an uplifting note. A new business in Wicomico County in Pittsville, Mays, what does this stand for? The Mid-Atlantic Youth Sports Plex with the ball fields. I talked to the owners there. They're very excited to invite Mr. President, you to come out, and the council members and County Executive Bob Culver. They really believe, and I would agree, that they'd like to see the partnership strengthened between Worcester and Wicomico Tourism and our Parks and Recreation to see how, as a region, we can continue to really maximize this kind of unique business that we have with tournaments coming from around the state and out of state here. So I was very encouraged when they gave a very positive report today, and they asked me they asked me to extend the invitation to you, and would like to see you come out and visit. So
Great, we'll keep that in mind. I know Steve Miller works very hard. I know he's here tonight. Steve's here, yeah, and Steve's been working very hard with that working relationship between Wicomico and Worcester County, and it's been very successful.
And it really allows Wicomico and Worcester really to maximize these events and across the board. I think it's very exciting. Thank you.
We kind of need to take a collective breath, right? Because it wasn't speed dating, but it was similar to that, wasn't it? Anybody ever taken that? No. Any questions from the council as far as any of the delegates or senators? Councilman Hall? You need to grab your mic back there real quick. We have a shortage of mics here.
I'd like to thank the senators and the delegates for coming tonight and bringing us the updates. I have some questions. I'm certainly looking forward to the book on the Shorebirds Stadium, and hopefully it'll be resolved next year, because I'm sure it's going to be
Already working on it.
quite a number of volumes. One of the things that wasn't mentioned tonight was the HUR, and we've lost over $58 million in the last number of years. We don't seem to be getting the relief that's needed. Can you address that, and please give us some help on how that's going to be resolved?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I found out in our committee, because that's the committee of jurisdiction for those types of bills. We actually had highway user bills in ourselves that we sponsored, and it's interesting because you can't find anybody in the legislature who's like, nah, it's not a good bill, but we can't get a vote on them. So, I'm not really sure, what the underlying current is, but for the municipalities, it's a little bit, conceivably, it's a little bit of an easier fix, because you're only looking at probably about a $28 million increase. Whereas for the counties, you're looking at about $300 million increase. And so it's kind of one of those things that I've seen, being on the council and a mayor when these things happen. It's much easier to take away than it is to give back. And
Yeah, but it was ours to begin with.
absolutely right. Yeah.
That's where you got it
So it's
from.
one of those things,
Not
like,
you, but.
I borrowed your microwave, man. You're not getting it back, But there seems to be, with the counties, a little bit of a different dynamic, and of course, anybody else can certainly share if they have a different perspective, but from my conversations with Mako and with with county council members and executives across the state, it seems the more rural counties truly depend on this funding, whereas the more affluent or urban counties kind of look at it as a secondary cause. And so it's kind of sometimes pointed to as, well, if all the counties don't agree, then, you know, we can worry about it when they do all agree. And so I don't know if you guys could give us some insight as to what's going on at Mako, that maybe we're hearing something that's not entirely accurate, or just the narrative is just wrong on that.
I'd like to add to that, because one of our colleagues on the House Appropriations Committee from the Shore, Delegate Jeff Grice, really took a leadership role in protecting highway user funds, and we actually had the funds in the House budget, and we're not able to hold it in conference. So to me, you start to think about what our strategy, you know, should be on that. Now, in the end, my understanding is 13 million came back. The 13 million more came back to the counties and local governments. So it's not, you know, it's not the original number we had in the House budget, but we were able to do that. And, you know, I think we really need a concerted strategy, and going back to Delegate Anderton's point, with Mako and MML on how to do that, because again, you know, we had it in that House budget to the certain point, and then we need to hold it in conference.
Yeah, and we understand, Carl, you touched on Mako. It's a discussion every day at Mako. We understand that everybody here is trying as hard as they can to make this happen,
So
and it is an uphill battle.
Just remember,
Senator
this has been a priority for the governor.
Sure.
And for the past several years, he's put the money in the budget. It's been taken back out. And he continues to state, and we all will continue to stand with him, that we will continue to work on that to get that restored. And I think there usually is a settlement of like 15 million that comes back in various projects, but I know he has continued to put special funds in for that. So you're right, we need a collective strategy to keep that in there.
Delegate
Yeah,
Hughes?
just real briefly, this certainly is a daily conversation that I have with the Vice Chair of Appropriations, and she used to be a mayor of a city up in Prince George's County. And so anyway, I was sharing with her our concerns on a regular basis. And, you know, we kind of fight and do fight extremely hard for it. And what the outcome was is like 12 million for the counties and 20.5 for municipalities. So it's slightly ticking up, but certainly we do need to continually make that effort and have that conversation with the key persons that are going to be behind the table to make those decisions right there at that moment.
Any other council comments, questions? Councilman, Vice President Dodd?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody on the General Assembly, the Wicomico delegation, for attending today and giving their update. Very informative. And some of you guys have kept us abreast the whole session, and we really do appreciate that. I do want to point out something that Senator Mathias, during Ocean City Bike Week, we also have Delmarva Bike Week here. So it's a big event for both Ocean City and Wicomico
Both
County.
the amateur sports and
Yes.
the shared bike weeks and all the festivals are good. So when I mentioned what I said about the, I mentioned what I said about being able to finalize that sale, that was important to Dave Rommel. And it's important here, not that capital investment that he's going to make with that dealership is critically important. But
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
as was spoken to about the field there in
Pittsfield.
I get it, and all was good. There's a lot of stuff, you know, you sit here and you try to pick what to come here and highlight and specific. But we've done a lot of good things, and I think, quite frankly, with the group leadership and with Wicomico in mind, every day we're there, and it's a 90-day session, but we work 365 days and resolve issues on your behalf and the county executive's behalf. But thank you, Larry.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah, and we do appreciate the open exchange, and especially the information that you've supplied to us ahead of time. I made a note of quite a few different points that I thought would be important that we discussed, and yet everything's been brought to the table, which is exactly how this Eastern Shore delegation works. And you're all being here tonight is exactly how this Eastern Shore delegation works. I think there's been more communication between the entire delegation and all the local jurisdictions than I've seen in quite a while. So we really appreciate that. You talked about the Warwick formula. Yes, that is very important to us. The opioids, Wicomico County has a very successful COPE program that we invested in. And, our minimal investment, just compared to what Anne Arundel County invested in theirs, they invested millions. And ours has been so successful, they're looking at expanding that on the state level. So keep that in mind, because if they're expanding that to a state level, it's always a justification for possibly more funding of a program and even something for Wicomico County. Because, again, that's very important to everyone here. The BAT systems that you talked about, trying to keep those in the critical areas, that's very important. Septic systems as a whole, trying to take care of, the Willards area and things like that. The eastern area of Wicomico County is very important. We also have, outside of the small package systems for the towns, we have individual systems where we're having a lot of concerns. I know that the executive and the council here, we have all been toying with the idea of maybe having a wastewater and sewer authority countywide. Now, how you take a bite out of that apple, that's pretty tough. But it usually involves some type of funding as well, which is what you're faced with all the time. So whether or not any of these monies might be available at some point in time for a broader way to address the issue, that could be very helpful. I know as it is right now, in some purchases of houses, they're actually, before a purchase can be made, before a person can even sell their house, they're having to take the septic system across the street to a piece of property across the street for a drainage field. So the solutions, mound systems aren't always solving our problems. So there are a lot of issues in Wicomico County that we think you're aware of, but we'd like to make sure that we reiterate that here. The only other thing I would express through education is I see a really strong push on pre-K. And there's always that discussion as to, where do you start with education? Where do you start with social services programs? I just think I'm beginning to really believe that you have to get involved. And, we've just been so used to, this is kindergarten, and all of us probably went to school starting when we were 5 years old, right, in kindergarten. But I think that there's a sort of paradigm shift, and I think pre-K is that. And we have to make sure that we keep that at the forefront, because that's where the learning always starts. The second part of that I see for Wicomico County is to some means by which to enhance our CET program, because we know that that's what we need in Wicomico County. We know that we have to get these technical skills to the students at a young age, and then hopefully advance that towards Warwick or wherever else it needs to be. Senator Eckert?
Yeah, several of the manufacturing and jobs tax credits program were specifically directed to Wicomico, Dorchester. So, I think there's a great opportunity to be able to change the way we've been doing business on these initiatives.
Okay, if you have any of that information, that would be
Yeah,
great.
we'll
And
get-
I don't know
we'll
if
get
it's
that
in
for
part
you.
of your package, but that would be good to have that if you have it. Okay. Any other comments from council or anyone here? Again, we really appreciate you all coming tonight and taking time. We know how busy your schedules are. We see you everywhere, so we know how busy you are.
Have a great summer.
Again, thank you very much. You have a good summer. Take care. Have a good vacation.
They say Johnny was at a ball game. I told him to go to the ball
I'd like to
game
also
and
note
sign.
that Mr. Bunky Luffman is in the audience tonight, in the House. He's in charge of the intergovernmental affairs as the Eastern Shore liaison for the governor's office. Thank you for being here tonight, Bunky. Take care.
Thinking of you.
Sure. Thanks very much, Senator. Will do. Thank you. Mr. Baker, good evening.
Good evening. Cannon, members of the council, I have one item for the council's considerations, the introduction of legislative bill 2017-05, which is the annual budget and appropriation bill of Wicomico County, Maryland, to adopt the county budget consisting of the current expense budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, the capital budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, the governmental and enterprise funds budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, and to appropriate funds for all expenditures for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017, and ending June 30th, 2018. I will note that you have received an amended or revised Appendix A, page 2, which came in at the last minute, and it's reflected in this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Entertain a motion from council to introduce legislative bill 2017-05.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
A discussion. Any discussion from council members? Seeing none, it's a roll call vote. All those in favor will begin by starting with Councilman Hall. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Councilman Kilmer.
Aye.
Vice President Dodd.
Aye.
Councilman Joe Holloway.
Aye.
Councilman Ernie Davis.
Aye.
Councilman Matt Holloway.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Legislative Bill 2017-05 has been formally introduced. At this time, thank you, Mr. Baker. Mrs. Hurley.
The next item we have on the agenda is a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2018 budget. We do have handouts on the table if anyone is interested in grabbing one of those. A public notice was published in the Daily Times stating that a public hearing would be held this evening at 6:30 p.m. on the proposed operating budget of the county for the period of July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. Mrs. Crispino will show the budget on the screen, and I'll read each fund number and title as shown in the budget. The county executive has submitted to the county council, as required by the charter, a balanced budget. He proposes a budget funded by many revenue sources, the principal of which is property taxes. The budget proposes to maintain the current property tax rate. However, since the property tax rate is higher than the constant yield rate, a public hearing is required by state law and will be held at the next council meeting scheduled for May the 16th. And looking at the expenditures for the operating budget, I will review one page at a time, as shown in the handout. After I'm finished reading each fund number and title on the page, if anyone has anything they would like to say in regard to any of the funds on that page, please go to the podium and state your name, address, and concerns. Historically, the majority of the public input has been with regard to the Board of Education's budget, so I will read that last. The first page covers Fund 1, County Council, Fund 2, Circuit Court, Fund 3, Orphans Court, Fund 4, State's Attorney, Fund 5, Executive/Administration, and Fund 6, Community Promotions. Again, if anyone has any comments, please go to the podium. Looking at the next page, we have Fund 7, Elections, Fund 8, Finance, Fund 9, Public Accountant, Fund 10, Purchasing, Fund 11, Law, Fund 12, Human Resources. Next, we have Fund 13, Planning and Zoning, Fund 14, General Services, Fund 15, IT, Fund 16, Liquor License Board, Fund 17, Sheriff, Fund 18, Salisbury Fire/Ambulance.
Good evening, President Ashani.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ashanti. I'm president of Wicomico County NAACP. And I have two concerns. One about the amount of money that we're giving to the Sheriff's Department as opposed to, let me just say what my concern is. The department out of most of the time that I've been here, I really haven't heard anyone come and speak up for the Department of Correction, the correctional officers. And I guess, I don't know if they have a union or anyone that's concerned about how much they're paid, how many officers that are there, whether they're safe. Those are the concerns that we have. we hope that you will not pass a budget that does not address and make sure that they have a cost of living. We hope that you will not pass a budget that will not include having money for the director to hire the proper people. We're concerned about the safety of the correction officers. They cannot protect the inmates, the non-violent inmates, if they are not safe themselves. So we have a great concern about that. So we ask you to, every year, it seems like it's an increase in what you give to the sheriff's department. Just recently, they got motorcycles. And in this budget, is there money for cars? And in last year's budget, wasn't there money for cars?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so the question that has to be answered for those of us that pay taxes is the money that was allocated last year, were the cars purchased? And if they were purchased, are they on the road? And why are we buying more cars this year when we just paid for motorcycles? So if we're having a problem with money or whatever, we need to look at the amount of money we put in the sheriff's department as opposed to corrections. And I think you bypassed, have you gone past education yet?
No.
Oh, that's for last. Okay, well, but anyway, that's the concerns that we have. We want the correctional officers' safety to be just important as the sheriff's officer safety.
Thank you, President Shanti.
Continuing, we have Fund 19, Volunteer Ambulance, Fund 20, Volunteer Fire, Fund 21, Corrections, Fund 22, Emergency Services, Fund 23, Protection of Animals, Fund 24, Public Works, Fund 25, Fruitland Water and Sewer.
Keep in mind that there are going to be two issues in reference to fire service. This would be relevant to the budget specifically. There's also an opportunity under public comments for any other discussions. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
Joe Morris, I'm the Wicomico County Chiefs Association President. I just had two questions about line 19 and line 20. First, I thank you for the proposed increase. We have a lot more challenges headed our way in the environment in which we operate in nowadays. The volunteer fire budget, proposed budget, is that for 12 companies or 11 companies? 11 companies. Okay. Why was it made at 11 companies instead of 12 companies?
At the time that I had to submit my budget, it was not voted on by the Chiefs Association that the volunteers from Station 1 were going to be recognized. I can't submit a budget without knowing that something was approved. They'd be like, I'll throw in $300,000 for what is.
All right, I'll make this brief because I know we have another discussion. When the county association voted at Station 16, okay, that's when company number 1 became recognized. It was then up to the Chiefs Association to figure out the intricate workings of everything else.
Well, we did not look at that from the executive's office as being final approval because it still had to go before your committee as well as the radio committee in order to give that, stamp of approval.
Chief, I would imagine that your concern is specifically
I'm looking at the numbers here.
Right.
And I'm here for
Right.
12 fire companies and well, more than 12, but
I think the budget reflects the 11 companies, and I think that in the last meeting with the Chiefs Association, it was discussed that there is a 300,000 sort of on hold, and trying to decide exactly what may happen with an additional volunteer company.
Okay.
It's just not listed in this particular line item.
All right, those were my questions. I'll just.
Yeah, good, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Corey Polidori, 800 Collins Drive, Fire Chief of Volunteer Company Number 1. You had stated that essentially there's $300,000 that is on hold, set aside. Would you be supporting that $300,000 to the Volunteer Company Number 1 to provide those services in that area?
Well, you're getting way ahead of us. We have a work session that we're going to be holding later on tonight to try to exactly sort through everything. I know we have this information that was put on our desk tonight. So we have a ways to work through it, and it's going to be certainly taken into consideration as we go through the budget process over the next month.
And that's separate from the airport funding, that $300,000 that you're referencing?
We're about on the same page you are. We're going to be meeting to try to see how all this comes together.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And looking at the next page, we have Fund 27, Mosquito Control, Fund 28, Gypsy Moth Control, Fund 31, Community College, Fund 32, Public Library, Fund 33, Tri-County Council, Fund 34, Public Health, Fund 36, Extension Service, and Fund 37, Community Access Channel. Next, we have Fund 38, Office of Economic Development, Fund 40, Pensions and Retirement, Fund 41, Hospital, Disability, and Death Benefit, Fund 42, Workers' Compensation Liability Insurance, Fund 43, County Debt Retirement, Fund 45, Social Services, and Fund 46, Transfer to Other Funds in Contingency. Next, we have Fund 50, Roads, Fund 60, Recreation and Parks, Fund 83, Grants and Mandates, Fund 84, Teen Adult Center, now known as Dove Point, Fund 85, Maintenance of Aged and Community, Fund 86, Commission on Aging, Fund 87, Life Crisis Center. Next, we have Fund 51, Solid Waste, Fund 52, Airport, Fund 53, Electrical Board, Fund 54, Local Management Board. Fund 56, Narcotics Task Force, Fund 60, Recreation and Parks, Fund 61, Wicomico Youth and Civic Center, Fund 62, Tourism. On the last page, we have the nursing home and also the Board of Education, Fund 30.
Mary Ashanti again, President Wicomico County NAACP. We don't have any objection as to what is allotted for the Board of Education, but we do want to say that there needs to be, due to the increase in violence in some of the schools that's going on, there needs to be more behavior social workers in place. And also, teachers need to be able to teach. They are not social workers, they're not psychologists, and they are not officers or whatever. They need to be able to teach and let someone else do those things. And so whatever this pool of money is in place for, that needs to be a priority. I think I'm hearing too many times that teachers have to use some of their planning time to do things other than planning their job and whatever. So they need to be able to teach, and some of those other people to do those things. And as always, we're concerned about school safety, and there needs to be, I don't know what is allotted for personnel workers or whatever, but there needs to be an increase in folks that work in the school and work in the community to help bridge the gap as to what's happening at home and what's happening at school. I think if there's more attention paid to that, then we may have less problems. But as of right now, as far as I know, there's not enough personnel workers or home liaison to take care of that. And we desperately need that.
Thank you, President Shawnee. You make a good point. I know that the Superintendent Hanlon has that as a high priority as well. John Palmer from the Board of Education, I think he would tell you the same thing, that that is a high priority. I would suggest that you may want to also go to the Wicomico County Board of Education meetings, because the county council as a whole will, fund in a broad sense the monies to support the Board of Education, but where the actual itemization comes into play and how that money is spent is more so the responsibility of the Board of Education. So I'd make sure they're aware of your concerns as well.
She does attend those meetings.
Thank you. I'm not surprised. Any other comments for the public hearing on the budget? Seeing none, that concludes the public hearing on the fiscal 2018 budget. Mrs. Hurley, I know you have another resolution.
Before we get to that resolution, would this be an appropriate time to go over the list of the departments that are tentatively scheduled for budget sessions?
If you would like to do that briefly, yes. For the council?
Okay.
Yes.
We can add to this list or remove departments from this list throughout the budget process. There have been some invitations sent out through Outlook. Currently, we have the Department of Economic Development, SWED, the Board of Education, Public Works, Elections, Library, Recreation, Parks, and Tourism, the Volunteer Fire/EMS, and the Sheriff. Are there any departments you want to add to the list?
Yeah, this is a preliminary list that went out to the council simply because we knew we had to start somewhere. We had to start quickly. So we established this based on last year's meetings that we felt were necessary. So in reviewing that through the email that Mrs. Hurley sent, please let us know what you would like to add. We'll also have work sessions as we go along to add what may be necessary. But as soon as possible, when you see anything else that should be added, and if you'd also think that it's not necessary to meet with some of these departments, let us know as soon as possible, and we could certainly rescind that invitation if the council as a whole is in favor of that. Anyone have anything that they specifically would like to add at this point in time?
Are we still on the 2 dates
Yes.
for the hearing?
Yes.
Meetings?
Yes.
So that's next Monday and Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Hurley.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is Resolution Number 70, 2017, authorizing the county executive to submit an application and accept grant funds in the amount of $17,035 from the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention. The Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention is accepting grant applications in the form of white papers for law enforcement technology equipment. The Sheriff's Office would like to submit a application for grant funds to purchase a portable surveillance camera system at the cost of $17,035. And I do believe we have representatives from the Sheriff's Office here. If there are any questions.
Great. Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 70, 2017.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
If you could state to the public your name and position. Thank you.
I'm Lieutenant Rich Weersberg with the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office.
And First Sergeant Mark Wagner, Wicomico County Sheriff's Office.
Unfortunately, there's not much more for me to add. Ms. Hurley took care of 90% of it, but we received this notification by email on the 24th of April. The governor's office didn't give much time for turnaround, so I appreciate you putting this on the agenda very quickly, and for Mr. Culver helping with that. The governor's office is asking for, they call it a white paper narrative, 1 to 2 page narrative, and a budget for equipment, technology equipment. We quickly sat down with the sheriff, went over some needs, and the surveillance equipment we feel it's a need that we don't have within our budget to ascertain. It's something that's been on our goal list for quite some time, and this came up, and we've written and submitted it. We're just waiting for Mr. Culver's signature and your approval to make it a formal, to see where we stand.
Okay. Any questions from council?
It sounds like these are dash cams?
No, sir, the equipment we're looking at now is it's probably about 1 to 2 feet high. We'll run off a battery that will send 4G information via 4G to our office, and we'll be able to surveil wherever we're at, where we're looking at from a distance and not be right there. It's easier for...
You're not going to advertise the location?
No, sir. And it will be immovable, so the equipment will be movable, so if we have a particular area that we have trouble, like right now we have some incidents with cars being broken into, so if we feel that there's enough intelligence gathered that we can focus on a particular area just where a deputy can't be, just to see comings and goings to help us narrow some down, just for one example.
Is somebody going to be monitoring that?
It depends on the situation we're using it for. If we have a active situation that we feel we need to deploy it for, then we would have someone monitor it. If it's something for in an evening session, maybe that we'll need to go back to and review, we would do.
So you don't expect it to be around the clock monitoring?
No, sir. The battery life is limited as well for how long it can be deployed.
John?
Lieutenant, how many cameras is this?
This is just one camera, and it's a combination of the mounting system. Right now, the mounting system being a vehicle, but then depends where it goes.
I went on the website looking for this, and it said that I couldn't have access to it because I wasn't military or police or a private investigator concerned. So this is one of the most expensive cameras I think I've ever seen in my life.
It's not just the camera; it's the whole system together. It's not from the camera all the way down to the process that's sending us the information to the digital system we have at the office to review the system and record it.
It'd be great if you had 2 cameras, one at each end of whatever you.
It would be fantastic. Yes. Now the governor's office was very limited. They were very specific. The amount had to be 15,000 minimum,
Right.
or 200,000 maximum. We weren't being greedy. We had a particular need, so we wrote the budget just to exactly the amount we needed. So
Good luck.
thank you, sir.
So this mounts in the car?
It has multiple deployment options, but one of the main mounting systems that come with it is to be placed into a car, securely placed in a car.
So you would park a car in a prime area and...
For one example, yes, sir.
One example. You can't mount it on a tree or in the woods or
I-
outside where it rains? I mean, is it...
It does come with a protective system, mounting system. It's not cool. I don't know if I trust as much as my son's deer camera, but
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not getting much use out of it.
yes, exactly. Yes, sir.
Anywhere, so, all right, okay, thank you.
The only question I had is, does this obligate us to a service contract, an annual service contract?
No, sir. It does come with a 1-year warranty, but it does not obligate us with the system at all. Once the system is up and running and is sending the data back to its receiving point, there's no further obligation with the company.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 70, 2017, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes. Thank you, Lieutenant,
Thank
First
you.
Sergeant. Appreciate it.
Mr. President, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Hurley. At this time, we open the floor for public comments. If you have any comments you'd like to make, please come to the podium, state your name and your concerns. Keep in mind that I know there are a lot of individuals here that are concerned about the work session with the firefighters. There is no discussion during the work session. That discussion is among whoever might be at the table with the council and how we might operate as an individual work session. So if there are comments that you'd like to make ahead of time so that we're aware of these concerns, please do so now, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Hi,
Good
my
evening.
name is Bunky Luffman. As Council President said, I'm the Intergovernmental Affairs Eastern Shore Liaison. So I just wanted to say hi again. So part of my position is going around and visiting all 9 of my counties and 56 of my municipalities. So this is another visit. And I wanted to say that I thought Mrs. Hurley was doing a great job. I know she took over from Matt Kramer several months ago, but you're reading this like a pro, and you know that can be nerve-wracking, and you know what have you. And I thought she graduated from Del Mar, 20 or 30 years after me. So
Tell the governor he can't have her.
That's right. That's right. But I wanted to, so this morning I started my day in Princess Anne at the emergency management headquarters down there, and I just wanted to say there were folks there, emergency management personnel from Wicomico, probably refreshing on hurricane awareness, and I just wanted to point that out to the public and to you guys, because right now we're not, no hurricanes are coming, but our emergency management personnel are right there, getting their training, getting their retraining. I'm sure as a lot of the first responders in the audience know about, and I just think that it's good to just remind the public at large that even when we're not considering or thinking about a crisis or anything like that, we have professionals who are out there learning and relearning and retraining and learning better techniques. So that was it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Luffman.
Good evening, Council. Corey Pollard, again, 800 Colony Drive. I just wanted to express the interest in supporting volunteer company number 1 and providing the services in Station 1's district there, which was outlined. This was approved at the recent Wicomico County Fire Chiefs Association last week, in which that territory was granted the service experts, what I would say the subject matter experts, the fire chiefs of Wicomico County, did vote in favor to allocate that territory to our company. We've been serving this county since 1986. Our recent separation from the city, there's no need to divulge in any of that. I think that's all been aired out enough, whether truth from one side or the other. The fact of the matter is that July 1st, we are no longer part of the city of Salisbury. We have always been county volunteers on a county workers' comp through the county, essentially on an agreement with the city of Salisbury. We are recognized by the Maryland State Firemen's Association, the Wicomico County Firefighters Association, and the Wicomico County Chiefs Association. We are asking to be funded the same as the rest of the companies in Wicomico County without affecting their funding either. It is important that the funding stays the same for the remaining companies in the county. Fire and EMS doesn't get any cheaper, unfortunately, but at what point is anybody trying to put a price on someone's life? Adding an additional ALS 24-hour unit or advanced life support unit to Wicomico County is something that is very important to the public safety and well-being of this county. This isn't about egos. This isn't about what I want or what anybody in this audience wants. It's what's in the best interest of the public and the public safety. And I ask that you consider that during your work group session. We've put a lot of time and effort moving forward in this. We've used our own finances thus far to purchase an engine and an ambulance. I have emailed all of you a copy of our volunteer roster this evening. You should all have that. All the names are listed there with an explanation of a couple other items inside that. So as you go back there, I ask that you, or as you carry this on after this hearing, I ask that you go about it in a cool, calm, collective manner to do what's best in the public interest and their safety. And the only other thing I'd like to ask is, if I could, if you're here to support company number 1, if you could stand. I think emails can be made up. I think that you can make up fake names and send emails in with Joe Smith to file complaints about, I don't agree with this or that. I think that showing up in person gives a louder voice. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
I had been working with Bob Culver for about 2.5 months now. President Cannon called me. I was at FDIC in Indianapolis, asked me to be here at the meeting this evening to, I guess, to bring everybody up to speed and shed some light on what's going on. Chief Pallador's already spoke. I'm not here for anybody in particular. I'm here for the entire fire service of Wicomico County. Starting at the beginning, some of you know, the Chiefs Association was presented with 2 letters in February. One stating that after much consideration and failed attempts for mediation, that company number 1 wanted to come out from under the umbrella of the Salisbury Fire Department and become their own entity. The second letter was providing notice that company number 1 appointed Corey Pallador as their fire chief. I checked our bylaws, made a phone call to the Maryland State Firemen's President. Company number 1 is recognized by the Maryland State Firemen's Association, and our bylaws state that we will recognize the county departments that are recognized by the Maryland Firemen's Association and their fire chiefs. Motion was made, motion was passed to accept both letters. What everybody here has to understand is the Wicomico County Firemen's Association is our parent association. Without them, there wouldn't be us. We're the operation side of it, they're the administrative side of it, which wasn't until the next month. I believe most of you were there, saw what happened, saw things that were expressed, the concerns made. They voted. They recognized company number 1. They also made a couple other motions. I'm not going to get into that. We'll figure all that out as we get there. And we proceeded from there. It was then kicked back to the Chiefs Association to go before the radio committee. As per our bylaws, to Chief Beach from Hebron, who is the chairman of the Wicomico County Fire Chief Association Radio Committee. The committee had 2 meetings. The first meeting, we had a lot of questions, had a lot of concerns. City-county agreement came up. We had a lot of concerns about that, not as to the fact of the actual agreement, to the fact of nobody had anything written down to show us that this is what we agreed to in concrete. At that meeting, there was some discussion between the representative of the city of Salisbury volunteer side of City of Salisbury Fire Company, who is on the radio committee, and Bob Culver on the specifics of the agreement and what was agreed to. So we asked them to come back a week later. This was over the Easter holiday. No meeting was had. Nothing was brought back for us to discuss. With everything that's gone on over the past 2 months, the County Chiefs Association had a meeting. It's the last Wednesday of every month. And we felt it necessary to take some kind of stance because this topic was going nowhere. We were not getting any cooperation of the facts that we needed to come to a determination of if the city-county agreement was a good agreement, if it was good for Company 1, if the city of Salisbury actually agreed to it. The specifics of that agreement. And also, the biggest topic for us was the fact that in our bylaws, when two fire companies have some kind of boundary dispute about anything, whether dispatch, anything else, those two chiefs and the radio committee sit down and hash everything out. At the end, that proposal was put in writing, that agreement is put in writing, and both fire chiefs sign off on it. I didn't have a signature from Chief Hoppus. I didn't have a signature from Chief Pallador. And still did not have one at the meeting. I was in Indianapolis at FDIC. Vice President Scarson was running the meeting. Motion was made, motion was passed, that if an agreement was not come to mutually by the deadline of July the 1st, that company number one be granted their existing county territory. Now, in no way, shape, or form does anybody sitting here, no matter what your opinion is of any of it, agree with if something happens at Parkside High School, that city station number one is just going to sit there. That's not the point. The point is, the reason I'm even here standing here talking to you about this is because people couldn't get together a year ago and straighten this out. So it has been put on the county association, now back to the county chiefs association and the radio committee to come up with something and get this straightened out. Like I'd stated before, at the county meeting at 16, that's when company number one was recognized. Everything after that is just figuring out how all this is going to work. They've been, I believe they said they were established in 1986. They've been around for a very long time. And they just want to fight fire. They want to help their community. They're volunteers just like I am. And I'm here to tell you right now, there's no difference in the heart of a career person or a volunteer. And the stuff that has gone on for the past 2 months in the media and the social media, pretty embarrassing, has been for me. I am proud of the 14 fire chiefs and the Wicomico County Firemen's Association, Fire Chiefs Association, because we decided that we were not going to make any kind of public comment, say anything off the wall, get on Facebook, and everything else that's going on until we came to a solution to this issue. And it was done. Well, now, I'm here today because we lifted that Wednesday night. This isn't about the city of Salisbury. This isn't about career people. This isn't about volunteer people. It's about what's best for Wicomico County. And it's about a group of people that want to do for Wicomico County. Yeah, we all have friends on both sides of this aisle. And it's divided us bad. And it's sad. But it seems to be nowadays, if you don't get what you want, you just start bashing everything. The presidential election, little thing at NSA just went off. Presidential election, I mean, it's a good example of that. Just whoever can bash the other person the worst is the victor. Or if I don't get what I want, if I go out and protest or cause a riot, and you know, I've made my point. It's not the way it is. You know, we need to work together. We need to communicate. We need to talk to each other. If we had just talked to each other in the first place, we probably wouldn't be here. But here we are. And like I said, company number one is an existing fire company. They're gonna need funding. I appreciate the proposed increase to the other departments, especially on the EMS side. Every day, something is, there's a shooting every day. It's every day. Delaware just lost a trooper, and it just keeps going on and on. Overdoses, stabbings. It's getting to the point where we need to put our EMS personnel in body armor or knife-proof vests. It's getting to be very dangerous, and we just need to protect ourselves and always keep in mind that as we're protecting ourselves, we're here to protect Wicomico County and the citizens of Salisbury and Delmar and every other municipality that's here. And learn how to argue and walk out of here and go get a steak and
If you're buying. Chief, you'll stay for the work session.
I will.
As I know you are. Thank you very much.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kenneth Vickers. I'm the president for the Wicomico County Volunteer Firefighters Association. I live at 711 Lakeside Drive in Salisbury. I just want to clarify a few things. The January meeting, it was brought to our attention and was asked what stations 1, 2, and 16's status was. The motion was made and accepted that they are recognized and are duly appointed to the association with full rights and benefits thereof. They are recognized. All I ask is that when you have your work session, that you think of all 14 stations in this county. All 14 stations provide a great service. I know in the current budget you're planning on 11. That should be at a minimum 12. I do think 14. I'm here to represent all 14. They are my stations. So please, look after all 14. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's been a lot said this evening. My name is Barbara Foskey, and I'm presently domiciled at 612 South Shoemaker Drive here in Salisbury. And although I am no longer a resident of Wicomico County, I do have some interest vested in the county as a taxpayer. And when I am in Maryland, I do live in the area that has now been designated to be served by Independent Salisbury Volunteer Station 1. It's my understanding that the corporation is the residual of the volunteers that were at Bigland Park, and that they further will serve the Salisbury, Ocean City, Wicomico Regional Airport. And that, of course, will be part of their responsibility, and I believe that is funded. It's my understanding that that's a solution to the situation that the county was presented with the change in procedure brought on by the recent American Airlines takeover of the Piedmont service, and it is the only service here in our local airport. And it also follows then that if this station is charged with a district response territory, that they should be funded accordingly. And whenever I'm in Maryland, I do stay in the area that is in their service. So scheduling between the decision made by the Chiefs Association and the presentation of the budget to the council seems to have created a little bit of a dichotomy and a conflict here. And I'm pretty sure that in your work session, that situation will be resolved and hopefully will be resulted in a solution that will be agreeable to everyone. So therefore, an amendment perhaps to the budget that would provide funding for the current year beginning July 17, ending June 18, would perhaps be a solution that you might consider to fund this this residual volunteer organization. That's all I have to say this evening. It's been a pleasure being here, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Fowski.
Thank you, Ms. Fosky. It's been a while. How have you been? I hope. Good. Good to see you. Because of this has come to light in the last week, and as Joe mentioned, it was voted on last week in its entirety. The first part of this, there was stuff about the pumpers, all that type of thing. So that's why I didn't take it as being in Station 16 when it was voted that night. You all were going out to get a pumper. You didn't even have the pumper at that point in time. So, but just let me make this short. The executive office will submit a budget amendment to fund these volunteers to become their own entity, be Station 12 within Wicomico County. They are recognized by the Fire Chiefs Association, so we will be able to go ahead and fund them if that's the case. So we'll work on that. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer it. Like I say, the airport is a remaining funding balance that, whether it be this group of volunteers or other people that want to step in and take it over, we still have got to fund the airport. So, but I will do a budget amendment to recognize this volunteer company as an active and participating volunteer within Wicomico County.
Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Seeing none, that concludes the public comments. This time, council comments? No, seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion, if I could, to adjourn so that we can go into open work session followed by a closed work session.
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried, meeting's adjourned. First item on the open work session is the fiscal year 18 Community Development Block Grant. I know that Ms. Lori Carter is here today. There she is, yeah. Okay. Excuse me? All right. Ms. Carter, I know you've been waiting. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. They need to get the tape adjusted. Thanks. We're going to take a